I didn't know that. Now, your dad. So, John Eric Holmes. Did he always go by all three names, or did he switch when a certain film star became prominent? And that's John
No,
Holmes for those who don't
John
know.
Holmes,
And
yeah.
please don't Google it. It won't do you, it won't help you any. But just know that it could tar someone's reputation.
He went by Eric most of his life.
Okay.
So I don't know why he didn't like the John, but when he decided to be a writer, he added the John back in again. But he did in the 70s, especially, he did get phone calls for John Holmes, the porn star. And I think he enjoyed that.
What do you know if he would play along with them?
I think he did a little bit, but not too much. He was a very playful man.
Good. That's good. And now, for those in the audience, one of the reasons that John Eric Holmes is so still worth talking about in the role playing game community is that he edited the first real collected edition of the Dungeons and Dragons rules, often today called the Blueholmes D&D edition. And basically, and please correct me if I'm mischaracterizing this, Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson, their posse, they had great ideas and very little in the way of professionalism. They weren't businessmen, they weren't professional editors, they weren't professional writers. They were just making this stuff happen the best they knew how. But your dad, by the time he got in touch with them, he was a professor of neurology. He knew how to organize ideas and topics and to spell check and edit and so on and so forth. And so after he got interested in the game, he approached the folks at TSR, Gary and crew, and asked them, hey, these three pamphlets you've got, it might have been, was it more pamphlets at the time, or was it just the three original pamphlets that were supplements to chainmail?
I think it was at least Greyhawks of the four.
Okay, okay. Yeah, this game is great, but it's kind of hard to access. Were y'all thinking of doing a single volume with all the rules in it? The story I've gotten is that Gary Gygax told them, "Oh, you know what? We were thinking about doing that exactly. Yeah, we hadn't got around to it, but we were thinking about that." And your dad told him, "Well, I could do it. I'd be interested in doing that." And Gary's counter offer was, okay, that sounds great, but I can't give you any money. But if you could do that, that'd be great. So I'm thinking that Gary didn't have a plan to do that, didn't have the capacity to do it. And if it hadn't been for your father putting it all together, the game could have failed before it got off the ground. Putting a professional collection of the rules and getting it rational and logical. Am I off base with that?
I like the story. It may
It's a
be
good story.
true. I actually believe that they were thinking about writing a beginner's guide or a basic set, and they just didn't have the people and the money. And so the fact that some guy who was, I think more so that he was a pulp writer than that he was a neurology professor, but both those together, I think they were like, oh yeah, cha-ching, this is a good idea. And to be fair, they did give him free games for the rest of his life.
How many games
He
was
didn't get
that?
the $1 million that he might have been owed, but he got some free games and from some free publicity and made a lot of people happy.
And so, in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons, what products did he get for free? What was his compensation? Was it the stuff that they couldn't sell and had sitting around the warehouse, so they just gave it to him? Or was it stuff that he might have wanted?
Well, we definitely enjoyed Awful Green Things from Outer Space. We got that. And Marvel Superheroes game, I remember that. I think he got every product one copy. They may have lost track of his address when he moved to England briefly. So I think maybe they lost track of him at that point. But yes, they gave us free games. And they made him a guest of honor at a convention and put him up a big table with Gary and the other luminaries. And I got to sit next to Gary Gygax's daughter, which is kind of a thrill for me at the time. It was a fun time.
Was that Heidi?
I don't remember.
I got you. Because I remember this picture of Tim Kask posing at an award with Heidi Gygax. I could be wrong, but she was quite the looker. So I could see why
Mhm.
you'd be excited to sit next to her.
She was not interested in me at all.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. From what I could tell, your father did the Blueholmes edition of the rule set and then a few articles here and there, mostly in Dragon magazine. But did he do much else with the role-playing game industry?
He wrote short stories, which were printed in the Dragon, the so-called Boinger and Zereth short stories, and he wrote a novel which did not get printed for a while, and then eventually was printed in the, I think, the late 80s, Maze of Peril. And he wrote a book called Fantasy Role-Playing Games, which was kind of an overview, mini reviews of all the products available. And that was printed also by a very small press. So nothing that sold 1 million copies, no.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Just to make sure the folks are tracking context, you had for D&D, you had the pamphlets, which were not always available. Maybe you could find one pamphlet, you couldn't find all of them. And then it was the Blueholmes, and then it was every other edition after that. So if you grew up on the Frank Mincer edition or the Aaron Alston edition or any of the other stuff, the first coherent edition was John Eric Holmes' edit of it. And we do appreciate him for that.
Thank you.